What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about Sony's newest open world AAA adventure game, Ghost of Yotei. Now, on the channel, we usually like to keep it to Nintendo talk because, well, they're just more interesting to talk about, let's be honest. They're always doing random crap. There's a direct every other week. People are complaining about something they do every other week. The discourse around Nintendo is always plentiful. I mean, just yesterday, they released a random-ass animated short, and that got people talking. Now, today it was revealed that it was indeed a Pikmin short, which if you were a Pikmin fan, you knew that right away. Come on, folks, you gotta know ball. But the point I'm trying to make here is that it's funny that I talk so much about Nintendo because I kind of use my PlayStation more, and before when I had a Series X, I used that more. And that's mostly because a lot of third-party games don't come to the Switch and the Switch 2, and even if they do, they're in a worse state, so I usually just end up buying them on my PlayStation or Xbox or, you know, whatever console I have at the time. But I play a lot on my PlayStation. And the thing about having an Xbox is that there were rarely good exclusive games to play on it. And now there are just no exclusive games on Xbox. But with Sony, they don't put out exclusives very often, but they usually get about one or two a year that are worthwhile. And I think Ghost of Yotei is one of those games because I've been having a lot of fun with it. I'm, you know, a good number of hours in, and I'm not even close to finishing the story because I think it's such an engaging open world game. So today, I want to get totes casual. This isn't going to be scripted. This isn't going to be super in-depth. I just want to give you my real life thoughts about Ghost of Yotei, just straight spitting off the dome, things I like about it, why I think it's pretty darn good, because I think a lot of people are down on Ghost of Yotei, and I know why, but I don't really know why, if you know what I mean, because it's just the discourse around everything these days is so annoying, but I think it is sort of enveloped discussion around Ghost of Yotei, and I'm not going to get into any of the off-the-field stuff with this game, you know, controversies, hirings, firings, actors, whatever. It's all crap, you know. I don't care about what the anti-woke people have to say about this game. I only care about the game itself, and I think the game is really great. So if you're expecting a rant about that, you've come to the wrong place. But I think my subscribers, although I don't have many of them, know what they're coming to this channel for, and that's real, raw discussion about the games. And that's what I'm here to offer you about Yotei. So hopefully you guys are interested in a little bit of a Yotei discussion. We'll see. You know, the analytics will bear that out. But without further ado, let's talk about Sony's newest single-player PlayStation Studios game. Now, as with Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yotei is absolutely stunning. I played Ghost of Tsushima a few months ago. It was actually the second game I played when I got my PlayStation. Of course, I went immediately to Astrobot and 100%ed that. But after Astro, I said, what should I play next? And I remember that Yotei was a few months out, and I said, okay, let me hop into Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut and see if I like the series before the new one comes out in October. And I loved it. I mean, I really fell in deep with it. I've got over 100 hours into that game. It was really my entire summer. From when I finished Astrobot to when I left for college, that entire period of gaming for me was basically just Ghost of Tsushima. Playing the story, of course, but also just fighting random Ronin, you know, freeing random encampments, and then, of course, doing all the random open world stuff they have in Tsushima, like bamboo strikes and fox dens and haiku and all of that stuff. And make no mistake, Ghost of Yotei has that stuff. In fact, stuff like fox dens and bamboo cutting and hot springs are just straight up back in this game, and they're mostly unchanged, although you'll do a little bit of different stuff in all of them. And ultimately, the gameplay and game flow is pretty similar as well. I think the gameplay is a lot better, and we'll get to that in a second, but ultimately it is pretty similar to its predecessor. But I think where Ghost of Yotei shines, not only over Ghost of Tsushima, but really over this entire genre of AAA open world adventure games that has taken the industry by storm since the release of Breath of the Wild, is that it keeps you in its world. It's so good at guiding you through the game. and through the open world, and not through maps, and not through icons, and not through all of this stuff that Ubisoft and even Sony has been criticized for in their open world games, where the flow is clicking an icon on a map, fast traveling to a certain point, following the waypoint to get to the location, doing one of 5 things that you've done 1,000 different times and checking that item off of a list and doing that again and again and again until you get the platinum trophy. That kind of stuff is technically still in Ghost of Yotei, but it's presented in such a different and much more engaging way, in my opinion. Obviously, the number one way it does this is the same way that Ghost of Tsushima accomplished it, albeit to a lesser extent. It's that beautiful open world, right? The world of the Ghost series is so darn beautiful. The art directors at Sucker Punch and the world designers at Sucker Punch are masters of their craft. Because say what you want about the accuracy of the world compared to the actual locations in Japan, I can't speak to that. And say what you want about, it being open world, AAA slop or whatever. But the one thing you can't deny about these two games is that they are absolutely stunning. And I know some people see that as a negative, like, oh, realistic graphics, big budgets, whatever. These worlds are so beautiful. They're so colorful. They're so rich. Ghost of Yotei especially has so much foliage and so much detail. And the thing that I think is way different compared to Tsushima is the draw distance. You see so much more when you look out into the distance in Ghost of Yotei, and combined with the new spyglass, which lets you zoom in and look at any sort of thing and place a waypoint on your map, you can very easily find a point of interest just looking out into the world, mark it down, and go to it. This is something that Breath of the Wild did so well with its spyglass sort of mechanic. And the reason that I think that flow of seeing something, marking it on your spyglass, going to it, works so well in Yotei specifically is, of course, the guiding wind mechanic, which, yes, is carried over from Ghost of Tsushima, but combining it with that spyglass and with the added draw distance allows you to find points of interest and explore this world without ever having to open that map. You see, in Ghost of Tsushima, when you liberated a camp, the map would poof and illuminate all sorts of different icons and places you could go to. In Ghost of Yotei, though, freeing one of those encampment type locations only gives you it as a fast travel mark on your map. It does not illuminate anything else in the world. So ultimately, almost everything that you discover in Ghost of Yotei is discovered because you are curious enough to seek it out. I know to some people that might sound stressful because ultimately that requires input of more time and effort to find this stuff, but in terms of engagement, it's pretty masterful. In Ghost of Tsushima, again, you would just click the icons that appeared on your map after defeating a bunch of enemies. In Ghost of Yotei, you find these little things to do in the open world or even advance the story by seeing something in the distance, marking it on your map with your glass, happening to see something when you ride your horse and making a hard turn in that direction to see what's up, talking to an NPC and getting valuable information which points you in the direction of a point of interest, going to the cartographer and asking him to mark certain places on your map that you can then go to. It might sound small, but there is no icon on your map or waypoint you are given that you do not earn. It doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. When you are given a location, it is because you did something in the game to get that location. And I think that is just so smart and so satisfying compared to Tsushima, which I really enjoyed. I almost 100% of that game. I spent 100+ hours in it. But after a while, the open world experience did get a little tiring because ultimately it is pretty arbitrary. In Ghost of Yotei, it is anything but. Every little part of this game feeds back into itself through its open world exploration. It's something that Sony has failed to do in their open world games so many times, and it's something that I feel like only Breath of the Wild has done in terms of an open world experience, where this sense of curiosity and exploration keeps you going and keeps you exploring these different locations and seeking out waypoints and points of interest in the distance that just seem cool or seem confusing, and you want to go to them and you just ride your horse towards them and see what's up. And through all of this, you do not feel overwhelmed. You don't feel like the game is just throwing a bunch of stuff at you and you don't know which direction to go because there's just so much in this open world and it's suffocating. It's not at all suffocating. It is all so natural, so well placed, so well spaced out. I really do think the open world design in this game is top tier in a way that, again, as much as I like Tsushima, that game really didn't have the same qualities. But let's talk about the other big aspect of this game and the aspect of Tsushima that made me love it so much, the combat. And honestly, this game's combat is leaps and bounds above Tsushima's, which I thought had incredible sword action combat. Ghost of Yotei takes it to another level. First of all, I feel like Atsu is just a bit quicker than Jin. Jin was a bit lumbering, a bit clumsy, whereas Atsu is very agile and calculated. You'll notice this in the open world as well when you're doing those stupid parkour sections that honestly I still don't really like. At the very least, Atsu is a lot more fluid, and when you go to grapple a tree or climb up a mountain, it just feels a little bit more intuitive and it feels a little bit smoother than it did in Ghost of Tsushima. And I think that's true of the combat as well. The combat is just so much more fluid than Tsushima. And I think this is helped through two ways. One, you can pick up swords and other sorts of weapons from the ground and throw them. In Ghost of Tsushima, you did have sub-weapons that you could throw, but honestly, I didn't think they were that useful or fun to use. And B, there wasn't any real visual feedback when you used them. The kunai was the main sort of sub-weapon that you could throw and do damage to enemies with. And it was just awkward, it wasn't fun to use, and it wasn't very interesting to me. You still have sub-weapons in Yotei, and I have yet to unlock all of them. But again, you can just pick up random swords from the ground that either were there before because you're going to these different encampments where there's weapons everywhere, or that a enemy that you defeated dropped. Like, you can kill an enemy, they drop their sword, you can pick up their sword and throw it at the next enemy, and you could use bullet time to slow down time and, aim that shot at their head and kill them in one shot as well. You get to a point where you're just pulling off these crazy combos and you're throwing a weapon and then dashing in and using that long spear weapon to knock an enemy down and then comboing them to death. There's just a lot of variety to attacking these battles that I don't think there was in Tsushima. And the other reason I think this is because no longer do you have stances. In Ghost of Tsushima, you would switch to different stances like moon stance and water stance and wind stance to defeat different enemies or to have a better chance at defeating them. In Ghost of Yotei, there aren't stances. There are just different weapons. And I think that's so smart because it doesn't really make sense for Jin to have a different stance and then all of a sudden be able to defeat a bigger enemy, or have a different stance and be able to defeat a more agile enemy. In Ghost of Yotei, though, it makes sense. If you encounter an enemy with a normal katana, you counter them with a katana, strength on strength. If you encounter an enemy with two scythes, you go for the long spear item to get a quickness advantage over them. And similarly, if you encounter an enemy with a spear, you use the dual katanas to get an advantage over them. It helps that these new weapons are really darn fun to use in addition to your katana. The dual katanas are awesome. They're so quick. You can pull off like 8 hits in a row if you're good at it and you time it right. And the spear item has all sorts of fun little moves that you can do with it. You can get an upgrade where you run into an enemy and spin the spear and knock them down, and I think that is a really cool move. And then there's a later upgrade you can get where you can spend some spirit to do like this 2-step knockdown, which is even more satisfying to pull off. There's also another sub-weapon you get later in the game, but I'm not far enough in the story to have unlocked it, so again, this is just a casual impressions video, so sorry if you were really hoping for thoughts on that fourth weapon, because I simply have been too enthralled by all of the side content to get far enough in the game to unlock it. And again, I thought the combat in Ghost of Tsushima was really good, like really fun, some of the best sword combat I've experienced in a game. And Ghost of Yotei, to me, is just a lot better. And I think another cool thing that goes along with the combat is that to upgrade your moves and moveset, you don't just defeat enemies and raise your, I forget what it was called, like awareness meter and level up. There's 2 ways in Ghost of Yotei instead that you can upgrade. One, you go to the shrines, which before just gave you charms or whatever, but now there's altars of reflection everywhere in addition to the shrines, and these altars will give you the upgrade points that you previously got from leveling up by killing enemies. This is another way, by the way, that Ghost of Yotei keeps you out of the menus. No longer do you level up and then go to the menu to upgrade. You only get to upgrade when you pray at an altar of reflection. It's just another way that it streamlines the experience and makes open world exploration better and less stressful for the player. And when I say stressful, I mean in a tedious sense. I'm not saying that games shouldn't be stressful in certain ways. Obviously, the combat in Ghost of Yotei can get very stressful, but I think when you explore a world, you don't want it to be tedious. You don't want it to be annoying. And I think it could be at times in Tsushima. It could be overbearing. It could be, annoying after a certain point. And I've played a lot of Yotei. Not 100 plus hours, but a good bit of Yotei. My PlayStation tells me it's around 30 hours, give or take. That number isn't always the most accurate. And I just haven't felt that same tension. I haven't felt that same restrictiveness. It's so much more free-flowing in its exploration and progression. And I just like that a lot more than Tsushima. Again, these are very small changes, but boy, do they add up. Anyway, getting back to the topic, the other way you can upgrade your weapons is by doing quests. Now, this sort of was the case in Ghost of Tsushima, but I think it's done a lot better in Ghost of Yotei. For example, you get the spear item by meeting Sensei Takahashi and training with him. And after you train with him and get the weapon, he gives you 3 tasks to do that will help him train more people and, build a stronger force at his dojo. And once you complete these tasks, you train with him at his dojo and you learn that Spirit Typhoon kick move that I was talking about earlier, where you do that double swing kick that knocks the enemy over. That's such a cool move to pull off. And once you do that, he tasks you with fully training yourself in the art of this spear, or in the game sense, fully upgrading your tree for the spear and getting all of the different upgrades from those altars of reflection. And when you do that, there's a cute little cutscene and you get an extra upgrade for your spear. I just think that is such a cool way to do these weapon upgrades. Obviously, you can also use items to upgrade their pure strength, but this quest in particular, of which there are some for various different main and sub weapons, is so much more engaging and so much more fun and so much more natural in terms of how you progress and how you upgrade these weapons, not only in their pure strength, but also in how you use them in battle and how you attack different situations. So yeah, overall, I think the combat is just terrific in Ghost of Yotei, and it was terrific, I thought, in Tsushima, but it really takes a step up in Ghost of Yotei. It's interesting because I really think the Ghost of Yotei is an upgrade in so many ways over Tsushima. Obviously, it's hard to have that same impact, that same wow factor when you're doing a sequel, but in terms of the game itself and what it gives you, I think Yotei is, again, so much more free-flowing, so much more natural, so much more engaging, and a lot more fun. Which is saying something, because it's a sequel to a game that I enjoyed a lot in Ghost of Tsushima. And it's funny because I've seen a lot of people online complain about it and say that it's not as exciting or interesting as Ghost of Tsushima, and more generally saying that developers and studios should not do sequels to their games because they're just inherently less interesting. And that's a very interesting line of thinking to me. I'm not saying it's wrong or invalid, but I do think it's interesting, and I almost want to make this its own video. And if you're interested in that, tell me in the comments below. This idea that sequels are a bad thing, or that sequels aren't as interesting. Because I feel like it's a line of thinking that almost only pops up in video gaming. I mean, we get sequels to movies all the time, and obviously the most lauded movies are not generally sequels. There are exceptions to that. The Godfather 2 is one that comes to mind immediately. But sequels happen all the time in movies. They happen all the time in literature. In music, you don't get direct sequels to albums very often, but a lot of albums are kind of sorta sequels in their own right. Not often are artists often redefining and redoing their entire sound from one album to the next. It of course happens pretty often, but a lot of the times you just get one album to the next and they don't sound all too different. It's just more of something that was already good. I think about the Kafune record from this year. You might know that band from their hit TikTok song Tek It, which, oh my goodness, is just one of my favorite songs of all time. But they released their second, that was not a 2. What was that? They released their it's hard to tell because I'm mirrored. I'm looking at the camera and I'm doing it with the front camera and it's mirrored and it's weird. It's hard to tell. Anyway, their second studio album, what is it called? Their new album is called Bite Reality. Their first album was called Running. And Running, of course, had Tekken on it. You know, it's the debut record. And a lot of people were complaining that Bite Reality was just more of the same for Kafune. But I really like that because I thought Bite Reality was an improvement on a lot of fronts for the band. And yeah, it wasn't radically different from their debut, but I don't see why that's such a bad thing. If, you know, Running was a bit rough around the edges and was, of course, their debut. It was their first attempt at putting an album together after a lot of different singles and EPs. Why not just try to perfect that formula on your second album? It's exactly what they did on Bite Reality, again, their second album. And while I don't think that record is perfect, it's not my favorite of the year, I thought it was pretty darn good, and certainly better than their debut. Although there's no songs as good as Tekken on it. But how could there be? That song is so good! It's so good. I get revved up when I think about it. Oh, I just love that song so much. Tell me in the comments if you like Tekken. You must. You must. Song's so good. You've definitely heard it because, God, it's just used on every single TikTok video known to man, but it's just such a good song. And I bring that example up to say that while some people did have complaints about Kafune's second album sounding pretty similar to their first, I think generally in music discourse, you don't hear people lobbying that complaint very often. If an album is really, really good, people don't really care if it's similar sounding to the last album. And again, I could be off base there, but I feel like I'm in a lot of music discourse spaces and you don't often feel that complaint. And even when albums sound similar to their predecessor, there's often new elements that are added. On Bite Reality, for example, the production is a bit cleaner. It's a bit more upbeat generally. There's a lot more finger picking in the guitars. And none of these are major changes, but when you add them up, I really do think that Bite Reality has a very different identity from Running, and thus is a valid second record for Kafune, because it isn't just the same thing. I think that is such an easy thing to say and such a boring thing to say about an album, because it's not the same thing. And I think that can tie back really nicely to Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei. Yes, they are in the same space. They are not radically different from each other. But Ghost of Yotei offers so many improvements, little things that improve on the flow and the gameplay. And again, none of those things are major. They're very little. And they make you feel like the change is not that big. But then you add up all of those little changes and you get a really improved and I would argue different experience from Ghost of Tsushima, and I don't see why that's such a bad thing. Obviously, it's exciting when a studio comes up with a new IP, right? I'm super excited for Pragmata from Capcom because it is exactly that, a new experience, a new world from Capcom, who often just relies on their, big IPs. But I don't really get why generally this anti-sequel discourse is so prevalent in video game discussion. And maybe I'm just too deep in the weeds here, and this is just like a problem for people who are way too locked into the discourse of this industry. But I feel like it is so much more prevalent than in film or literature or music or whatever. And I don't get that at all, because Ghost of Yotei is such a valid experience on its own, and even in the context of its predecessor, it's just better. It's just freaking better and more fun. I don't see why that's a bad thing, especially in a medium like video games, which is so interactive and so personal to the player and takes up so much of our time. Why wouldn't we want to give these developers a second shot to improve and refine their original idea and make it better? I think that makes total sense in the context of this industry. And even if it's not the most exciting thing, if you liked Ghost of Tsushima, I don't see why it's a problem for you. And if you didn't like Ghost of Tsushima, why do you care about Ghost of Yotei? Like, no offense, but there are so many great games coming out this fall, whether they've already come out or are going to come out in the next 2 months. And why are you wasting your time on a sequel to a game you didn't like? I don't know, just a rant from me, because I feel like a lot of people are arguing in bad faith when they're talking about this stuff, or just about video games in general, and it kind of annoys me. But I don't want to get too deep into that, because that's just a very dark and grimy rabbit hole that I can get really worked up about. So, about Ghost of Yotei, I've just really been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it a lot. Again, it's not radically different from Tsushima, but it improves the Tsushima experience in so many different ways. And for a game that, didn't have a huge budget, reportedly, didn't have a huge, long development cycle, I think that's healthy, and I think that's important for the gaming industry, which has gotten so bloated over the past 5 years, really since Ghost of Tsushima came out. I think a game like Ghost of Yotei is important and is a sort of structure that a lot of different developers should follow, especially the bigger ones in our industry like Sony. So, I don't know, it's not gonna be my game of the year, but I've been having a lot of fun with Ghost of Yotei. So tell me in the comments, have you played Ghost of Yotei yet? And if so, have you been liking it? What's your favorite part? Do you like it more than Ghost of Tsushima? Tell me all of that in the comments. I wanna get some discourse going down there, because we all love discourse, don't we, folks? And it's a freaking party down below, so you don't wanna miss any of it in the comment section. Say something, respond to someone else. I'll be responding to comments down there, don't you worry. So give me your thoughts on Ghost of Yotei, and give me your thoughts more generally on sequels as a concept in the video game industry. Do you like them? Do you hate them? Are you on the side of, no, we should have original IP, we should have new experiences? Or are you on the side of, yeah, let's reiterate, let's improve on our past experiences and try to make them better? I don't think there's a right answer, but I think it's an interesting discussion, and if you'd like to see a whole video about me discussing that and giving a more structured discussion on it, tell me in the comments, because I think it could be a fun video. With all that said, make sure to like the video, subscribe, hit that big, fat button. A lot of fun stuff going on the channel. Speaking of Ghost of Yotei, I just did a live stream, of me playing a little Ghost of Yotei, just casually, trying to figure out the whole streaming thing. I want to do that more. I got an Elgato capture card, which also was capturing the gameplay that you saw in this video, so tell me in the comments if it looked good, I guess. If there are any stutters, that was my fault, trying to figure out this whole capturing gameplay thing. It's a lot more complicated than you'd expect. But the point is, if you don't want to miss any live streams from me or any other content that is going to come down the pipeline, make sure to subscribe and hit that freaking bell so you get notified when I go live or when I do anything. When I make another impressions video like this one for any other games coming up in the coming month. And to that point, if you like this video, if you like this format, make sure to tell me in the comments if I should do more impressions videos in the future. More, less scripted, more off the cuff, quicker in terms of how long it takes from the game releasing to me talking about it. Tell me all of that in the comments, feedback. I'd love to hear it on this structure in general. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.